Okay, so flats. Again, it's not as daunting as you might think to do. It's actually very simple if you know the right technique. Technique is everything when it comes to changing flats. The biggest hurdle I see for people is they get stuck trying to either take the tire off or put the tire back on, and it becomes frustrating, but a lot of it can be resolved with just the right technique that you use. So we'll take the air out of this tire. Look at it, it's a big tire. Cool, so removal of the rear wheel is probably the harder of the two wheels to remove, so that's why we're going to do it today. First thing you want to do is shift into the last cog, the hardest cog. That is sort of your guide for taking it off and putting it back on. The reason we do that, when you put it back on, you know what cog to line the chain up into when you need to put it back on, right? So it's just an easy way to remember. If you have a quick release system, like a rim brake or an older disc brake bike, again, just flip the quick release, the wheel will come right out. If you have a through axle, you may need either a 6 or a 5 mil Allen key to remove it, so it should be on your multi-tool. Some through axle systems have a handle, some don't, so most of the time it's going to be a 5 or 6 mil Allen key. Through axle, actually we'll flip it this way because then you guys can see. I'll do it this way. Okay. So through axles are threaded through the frame into the other side, through the wheel, through the frame, and then they thread into the other side here. So removal is fairly simple. Just loosen it, and then it will come out. So that's a through axle. So super simple stuff, not too hard. Then we want to get the derailleur. So it's not going to move anywhere because the derailleur is currently holding the wheel in place. So the best way, we're going to flip the bike back around because now we don't need to see that side. Okay. Best way for removal is grab the derailleur and manipulate it backwards like this to allow the wheel to fall out. And then you'll just have this part of the chain, so you just move that out of the way and then we'll come out. Every derailleur can be moved backwards like this. The cage can be manipulated this way and this way to allow for removal. So we have our flat tire here. First thing we're going to do is just do a quick inspection around the outside to see if there's any sort of glass, staples, anything metal, something like that that was picked up, like a needle of some sort, wooden needle, anything like that. Just do a quick inspection to see if anything's poking out. If there is something poking out, pull it out. If it's glass, probably is other pieces of glass in the tire, because if you pick up one piece, you probably picked up multiple. It's kind of how glass works. So just double check around if you see glass just to make sure that there's no other glass. Once you've done the inspection and you pulled any debris out, first thing we're going to do is start at the valve here. The goal is, remember how I talked about earlier with the bead and the hook hooking in? So right now it's currently hooked in. So I can't, if I was trying to remove it with a tire lever, right? I wouldn't be able to get my tire lever in because it's currently in that hooked state. So what we want to do is we want to push that bead to the center channel of the rim off the hook of the rim. So all we have to do is just push, and you'll hear a distinctive pop noise when you get it off, right? And so we're just pushing this bead to the center channel. This will also create the most amount of slack for removal of the tire. That's the key to all of this, is creating as much slack as possible for install and removal. That'll make taking it off and putting it back on easy. So we've done our one side, it's pushed all the way to the center. Now we still have this side hooked in, so push this side in as well, all the way around to the center. That'll create the most amount of slack. Now I'm able to get my tire lever in between the tire and the rim. And what you want to do with the tire lever, at least, is just kind of pull it over and just guide it along here. And you can see that I got half the tire off. Another way of doing it depending on the rim and tire combo. Some rim and tire combos will be pretty loose like this. Some rim and tire combos will be pretty tight. Depends, again, a lot. But everything can be removed by hand if you know the right technique. So in this case, I don't actually need a tire lever to take this off. What I can do is I can pinch the top of the wheel here, and then if I just work my way around this way while pinching the top, this is actually creating slack in the tire by pushing it to the center bead of the channel, and then I can just manipulate the tire off that way, and it comes off super easy. Now, you can just use the tire lever and it makes your job 10 times easier, but this is kind of just a fun party trick. I can take the tire off with my hands. I don't need a tire lever, right? You don't have to take the tire completely off to change the flat. You can just do it halfway as I had it before and then pull the tube out. Sometimes you may want to take the tire off, especially if you found that you picked up some debris, because it's a lot easier to check for debris on the inside of the tire, things that have gone completely through, when it's completely off, than when it's halfway on, right? Just takes a little longer. So if you want to change it quickly, just do the halfway method. If you want to change it and thoroughly check, take it off completely. Remember the little valve nut, keep all those little pieces to the side. Most of your tubes will have the spare already on it, but sometimes it doesn't. That just keeps the tube from rattling around. Pull your valve out. Now we have our bad tube here. If you're doing this at home, what I would suggest is take your pump at home and pump this up and find where the leak is coming from. So you can identify, oh, it's from the top. So I know that something had punctured through the tire. Let me go physically check the tire to make sure I've pulled all the debris out. Or, for example, sometimes what can happen is you hit a pothole or a curb or some square edge, and it causes what's called a pinch flat. What a pinch flat is when the tire compresses the tube against the rim, it goes flat like this, and it causes a snake bite type puncture. So there will be two distinct holes, like a snake bite, on the tube itself, and that's what you know that was a pinch flat. You can only really do that at home because you don't want to start pumping away with your little hand pump, which just doesn't get a lot of volume in, or even waste the CO2 to try and find what happened to the tube. So we'll just set that aside, take our tire, and then carefully, because there might be glass or metal, run your hands along the inside of the tire to feel for any glass or debris. And I'm also checking the top of the tire as I'm doing this as well. So I just want to run them on the inside. I find a piece of glass. You can always sort of bend the tire out like this to try and pull it out, right?
So is it better? Is it better just to take the tire off as opposed to halfway?
It's easier to find if there's any debris. If it was a pinch flat, for example, and you know it was a pinch flat, because you'll know if you get one, you hit a square edge and your tire would just go and kind of lose all air quickly. Yeah. You don't need to check the tire because there's probably not something in the tire. So you can just take it off halfway, pull the tube out, put a new tube in, that sort of thing. Much easier to do, not as long too. So if you're pressed for time because the group's waiting on you, yep, it's an easier one. Once I fully check the tire and I'm good with there's no debris in the tire, I'm going to put it back on halfway because we're going to put the tube in after. Tires are directional, or most tires are directional. Most tire brands will have a directional arrow on them. So in this case, this one, it's very faint, but you can see there's rotation mark. It says rotation there and an arrow, right? Everybody see that? See the rotation? Yeah. Most tire brands, if they have a direction for the tire, will have the rotation arrow on it. And so the rotation arrow is the direction of the tire rolling. So in this case, it needs to roll forward. So the wheel is like this, so the tire needs to go on like this, not like this. Some brands don't have it, in which case, don't worry. If it doesn't have a rotational arrow, but it looks like it should be directional, i.e. it kind of has like a pattern, like arrows kind of pointing towards a direction on the top. You see how like the tread, there's like kind of arrow, it's kind of arrowed forward, makes sense? That's probably the direction it rolls in, right? So that's the safe and easy way to determine. We like to line logos up with the valve. It's a professional way of doing it, makes it look good. It's not a necessity, so you can kind of put it on any way you want. But if you want to look pro, line your logo up with your valve.
Pros do it so if they have to do a quick inflation, it's easy to find the valve.
Easy to find the valve, yeah. Another reason I do it is if it's lined up with the logo of the valve and you inflate your tube and find there's a specific hole, you kind of know, okay, the valve was here, the hole's down here, so wherever the piece of glass or whatever in the tire is, I can kind of go to that area and start looking for it. Just makes it a little easier. Again, that's more for at home rather than on the side of the road. Just to get you home though, you don't have to line the logo. Okay, so what I like to do, I like to rest the wheel either on the ground or my feet. And I'll take the tire, make sure it's not folded up, make sure we're in the right direction. We have our logo, find our valve hole, which is where the valve goes into. Start over here, just putting the bead onto the tire or on the rim itself, and then kind of working your way down. Now, same thing, again, we're trying to create as much slack as possible. So if we start here holding the tire and kind of run our thumbs down the side here, we will create that sort of, now we're at this point where we're trying to get this part of the tire over the lip of the rim. That'll create as much slack. What I like to use is my palm instead of my fingers. If you try to use your fingers, that's not as much leverage. Your palm utilizes all this leverage, your fingers only utilize this leverage. So grab your palm and kind of roll the tire up, and then you'll know it goes on because it'll kind of pop itself on. So now we have half the tire on. We can put our tube in. We have our spare tube. Now we'll get this guy ready. What you want to do is you want to add a little bit of air to give this shape, because putting it in when it's all flat like this, what can happen is it can twist into different shapes. It's very hard to put in, and then when you go to inflate it, part of it's twisted. It might give off a funny shape when it's inflated, or even it's not fully inside of the tire as you inflate and it pops out and blows, and then you're stuck with a bad tube. So what I like to do, it's not very hygienic, but you can do it, is just blow on it like you would with like a balloon animal or something like that, just to give it some shape. This kind of sucks to do when your heart rate's at like 180, but
You could also use your pump up.
you can also use your pump as well. But if you have a CO2, on only a CO2, this is your only option, because you don't want to start using your CO2 to give the tire tube shape. So now the tube has some shape. It doesn't need to be like super inflated, just enough again to give it that shape. Put the tube inside the valve hole here, slide it all the way in, and then fold the tire over the tube, and then just start, what your goal here is you're tucking the tube up and in. So you're basically trying to get that tube sitting inside the rim and in the tire at the same time. So you're just going to go around, and what I'm doing is I'm just pushing up and in at the same time with my hand, just getting that tube fully in. It's okay if it sits out a little bit like this, because we're going to go and we're going to push it in when we do the rest of the tire. Now what I do, as I start about sort of 3/4 of the way away from the valve, again, it doesn't really matter where you start. Some people will tell you that there's the least amount of slack created around the valve. I don't find that to be 100% true. So again, with my technique, you won't ever really need to find the slackest point, because you're going to create the slackest point. So start sort of folding the tire up and onto the bead, or on the hook of the rim here, just kind of going around. As I'm going around, I'm kind of tucking my thumb under here to push the tube into place, because if I don't do that, the tube might kind of slip out, and then that can cause some problems. So I'm sort of pushing with this side and pushing the tube in with this side. Sometimes what may happen, and what's happening here, is it's a really loose fit, so you kind of have to hold the tire to get it on. We're going to come to this point here where you might not be able to get it on because it's the tightest point. It's created by you putting the tire on, it creates that tightest point. So what I do, bring it down here, and this is the key point, and this is what makes it the easiest to do. Start here, push your thumbs like we were doing before. Push your thumbs all the way to the center channel here, and just create all that slack. And basically by creating all that slack, this will just roll on very easily. That's the key there though, is you gotta sort of push the tire into the center channel of the rim with your thumbs as you're going down. And I'm creating a lot of slack by doing that. And then that's what allows you to sort of put the tire on. I'll do it with another one, like a road one, a little bit tighter, give you a better example on how it works, because this is a bigger tire, it's a little bit easier to do. But yeah, that's it. So most tires, I would say about 50% of tires I can take off by hand. 100% of tires I can put back on by hand. I don't need a tire lever. I would never recommend using a tire lever to put it back on. You can use it for removal, but putting it back on, what can happen is if you start using a plastic tire lever to put it back on, is you can catch the tube and pinch it. And so all that effort of putting the tube in, you've now created a hole in the tube. And so you're kind of dead in the water at that point, right? So that's why I always recommend by hand. And it's all technique based, so just kind of, again, the whole goal, create as much slack in the tire as possible, and it'll make your job a lot easier to push the tire on and use your palms, right? I'm kind of rolling it with my palm, putting it back on. Those are the two things. I've never found a tire that I haven't been able to put on with that technique. Who's used this CO2 before? Okay, so I'll show you how to use the CO2 because.
Can we do some tube swap, like do you do a front wheel? Like,
Yeah, we can do it in this.
take out 5 wheels, 4 wheels, and get everyone to do it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyone want to do a flat? Good. Let's do one. Yeah.
Everybody should at least try one today while I'm here. Just give you sort of a good example. Show you what you're doing wrong, show you what you're doing right, right? So.
Question.
Yeah.
Are certain tires more puncture proof compared to other tires?
Yep. Yep.
So
Different
how do you-
compounds and tire technology will have different properties, right? So some will be softer and faster rolling, some will be harder wearing, so they'll last longer and they'll have more flat protection, but they don't ride as nice, right? They have a little bit of a tougher feeling to them, so it's sort of a trade-off. There's some sort of nice tires that will kind of benefit from both, but if you're looking for more flat protection tire, there is a little bit more of a trade-off with the ride feel that you get from the tire. Because it has more rubber, more material inside of it to prevent things from puncturing through, that comes at the cost of the tire feeling. It's not as soft, so it won't feel as good under you, but you won't get a flat, so why does that matter, right?
Yeah. And gravel tires are more puncture proof than road tires?
I would
They
say
seem
it's not
bigger
necessarily
and
about
thicker.
puncture proof, it's more about the volume of the tire and the grip the tire offers. That's why it's more suitable for gravel. Because this tire is wider, it can provide better grip and better comfort over rougher surfaces. And then also it has a little bit of tread on it to help with loose surfaces, so gravel, mud, that sort of stuff, right? Where the tread will dig in versus a road tire, obviously there's no tread on it. It's slick, it's designed to be fast on the road. So it's sort of horses for courses. Because you can get a very puncture-proof road tire and you can get a not so puncture-proof gravel tire. It just depends on what you're looking for.